Hello, so today's plan is to make the flare leg jumpsuit. So we have all of the pieces here. I'm going to start with the front pieces because my work desk is not big enough to show everything at once. So I'm going to move the leg pieces out of the way. And the gusset as well. So a few things to note before we get started. This is athletic knit fabric, which means it has about 15% or 20% elastane in it. I'll have to check the listing, I don't remember which one it is. So I'd recommend 4-way stretch fabric, which means it stretches in both directions. I'd recommend 4-way stretch fabric for this because it's more of an athletic style of jumpsuit, and at least 15% elastane in its composition. Usually on the website or the tag at the store, it will tell you the composition of the fabric. And we want fabric that has about 40% stretch, 40 to 50% stretch, which means 10 centimeters of fabric will stretch to about 14 or 15 centimeters. If you have fabric that is much less stretchy, maybe just like, 30%, 20% stretch, then you're going to have to size up to make sure it fits. And if you have fabric with a lot extra stretch, you're going to have to size down. But I wouldn't recommend getting extra stretchy fabric because it tends to not recover very well. And it's going to stretch out over time and give that sort of baggy look. So definitely keep to fabric with 40 to 50% stretch. So I'm going to try my best to show you accurately which side is front and back. But it is a solid color, so it's a little bit difficult compared to like a patterned fabric. You could easily see the front and back. So I'll try and be very clear when I'm explaining it. So we have the two front pieces here. I'm going to place them right sides together, so the good sides facing each other. And we need to pin the armholes and the neck hole here. Like so. We're going to move on to the back pieces. So the same thing, we're going to place them right sides together. It's hard to tell with my fabric, but I can tell in person that this is the right side, and you should be able to tell the same with your fabric. Now we're going to do the same thing, pin the armholes, the neck hole, but we're also going to pin this back hole here. Now we're going to sew all of these edges that we've just pinned. I use my overlocker as standard, so that's what you're going to see from me today. But if you just have a sewing machine, that is completely fine. Just do a zigzag stitch instead and then trim off the edge. So I'll show you this. So that's all done. I'm using a black thread in the hopes that you're able to see that a little bit easier. But obviously when you do this, you would use a matching thread. Don't use black like me. We're going to take this back piece, turn it the right way around, and I'm going to place clips on the raw edges, which is just going to make it easier to manage. There we go. Now we're going to place this on the inside of this one. So I'll just put that piece up. I'm going to take these shoulder straps and thread them through and pin them to the top. Now we're going to pin the side seams together. So we're going to match up this edge to the underarm edge here. This is why I find it easier to put clips on first, because then I find it easier to line up all the edges. Now we're going to sew along here, same with the shoulder straps. This is what it will look like. So we do need to tie off these overlocking threads. I'm going to trim these ones because this section is going to be sewn onto the bottom, so there's no chance of it coming undone. And I'm going to just tie off these ones. Now we can flip this the right way around. And the top's all done. So now we move on to the bottoms. So I have the gusset piece. I have the back pieces, and I have the front piece, which I'm just going to put off to the side for a moment. Don't need it just yet. Okay, so we have the two back pieces. I'm going to take my gusset. I'm going to place it right side facing down and the point facing up towards the top of the pants. I'm going to line it up with this edge here. I'm going to pin it. And I'm going to sew just this section here. This is what it will look like. I'm just going to trim off the extra long threads. Now we need to open up this gusset piece. We're going to take our other leg section. We're going to place it right side facing down. Going to pin from the top to the bottom of the gusset here. And we're going to sew all the way along. Just something to note, when you do get to the section where the gusset is, we want to keep that seam folded flat towards the outside. That's all done. The gusset is sewn on. We're going to open it up, place it right side facing up, and we're going to know that it's the right side because we have these finished seams here. We're going to take our front piece and we want to place it right side facing down against the back piece here. Now I'm going to pin all the way along the edges and also this inner seam here. Just something to note with this middle part here, you can see the point of the front piece. You need to line that up with just the middle of the gusset triangle here. And then an easy way to pin long pieces of fabric like this, I've found, is like you hold up the two edges, then you pin in the middle, then hold up these two, pin in the middle. Because stretchy fabric, sometimes if you pin from one side and then to the other, you sometimes have this little bit of extra because you don't realize that you're sort of stretching it as you go. So yeah, the way that I'm able to pin so accurately is you just take two pieces, pin in the middle. Mostly helpful for very long sections that you have to pin. That's all done. So now we're going to sew the side seams and this inner seam here. So I finished sewing those seams. I'm going to trim off the excess. Now we're going to connect it to the top. So we need to turn it the right way around. And we want to be working with the top of the front of the pants. So we want to be working with this section. So we're going to grab our top. We are going to fold it in half so that we can accurately get the center point of the front, like so. Now, because this top part is at the moment reversible, it doesn't matter which side you use because all the seams are hidden. So we're going to line up the clip here, the center of the top, with the center of the pants. I know where the center is because you can see that little like the arrow part, like that. Now these side seams line up together as well. I'm going to pin those. I'm going to pin in the middle. Now I'll turn it around. And I'm just going to pin this edge here as well. So I have not included a notch of where to pin this, but the section is so short that it's quite easy to see. You just pin it flat. Or clip it. I should be saying clip it because I use clips. Do the same for the other side. And then that leaves this raw edge at the back here, which is exactly what we want because we want to use this and get a nice V, which I'll show you when we get to that point. But we are going to sew from here all the way around to here, keeping this part raw. So I'll show you what I mean. So this is what it will look like. I am going to trim off these thread edges here. Now I'm going to show you with the sewing machine what I'm going to do to neaten that up. But the next step is to, I'm just going to flip this around. So the next step is to do this V, finish off these little edges here, and hem the bottom, all of which I'm going to show you with the sewing machine. So I'm going to show you how to do the scrunch bum on the back. So more than a scrunch bum effect, it kind of just accentuates the V rather than give like a traditional scrunch bum effect, which you will see at the end. But we've got the center back seam here. You're going to fold the seam allowance to one side. It doesn't matter which side you do. Then you're going to fold it down 1 centimeter. You're going to take your elastic. So I don't actually measure my elastic, I just use it freely, and I'll tell you at which point to stop sewing and then you trim it off. That way you're not wasting too much elastic. So we're going to place it on the seam allowance to where the raw edge is, and then you're going to fold over that top section again, sort of encasing the raw edge and encasing the elastic as well. Let me just change my sewing machine settings. Now we're going to push this under your sewing machine, and we're going to zigzag stitch. So for this top section where you're stitching through a few layers of fabric and the elastic, you just want to go nice and slow and also do some back stitches. So I just like to use my tweezers to sort of like feed it through, because sometimes with this many layers it gets a little bit stuck. So I just go nice and slow and feed it through. Now once that part is done and you're now sewing on the elastic part, you want to pull the elastic as far as it goes. And the reason I don't do this beforehand is sometimes there's not enough stitches through the elastic and you'll just pull right out and you have to start again, which is a little bit frustrating. So I'm going to pull the elastic and sew it on top of the seam allowance here. I'm going to pull it as far as it goes. Now you want to stop 10 centimeters above where the gusset starts, which is around about here. So I have a few centimeters left. Now when you get to the end, do some back stitches. Trim off the threads and trim off the elastic. Now if you have any loose threads here, just now's your chance to tidy it up. It's a little bit difficult for me to sew straight with this camera in front of me, so yeah, I've gone a little bit off here and it's definitely not as neat as I would like, but if you have the right color and you have like not a camera in front of you, you can probably do it a lot neater than this. So we've got these two little sections here to do, where the top is connecting to the pants. So what I like to do is place it in my sewing machine a few centimeters away from where it starts on the seam allowance. Now with this part, I like to fold it in half, but then also tuck it in so there's a third fold. I'll show you when I'm done, so then that will be more clear as well. So you want to sew from maybe 2 centimeters into where the top is attaching to about probably 2 centimeters down on this raw edge. Let me show you, 1 second. So this is what it's going to look like. Again, you would use the correct color thread, don't use black like me. I'm going to trim this excess And this is what it looks like on this side. So you can see I've folded it down, but then I've folded it again. And then after this, all you want to do is trim off these excess threads if you have any. You might not have any if you've used a sewing machine throughout. But yeah, I just like to tidy up this section afterwards. Be careful not to cut a hole inside the pants. This section, I've done that a couple of times. So because this section in the back is folded down twice, that's why I fold this part down twice, so that way we've got the raw edge tucked in and we don't have to finish the entire edge. And the reason I don't like to do that is because I think it looks a lot cleaner when it just sits on the body like this. If you do want to sew all the way across and sort of close that edge entirely, you can. It's just a preference for me not to, and if you do use the right color thread, it's not going to be as obvious as this. I'm going to do the other side as well. So off camera, I've managed to do this side a little bit neater than the other side, which is nice. But that's the securing stitches. And the back section is all done. So the only thing left to do is to hem. And the reason I want to show you this specifically is because of the way it's designed with no front seam. The flare leg has had the pattern piece for the flare leg has had to be a little bit different. And what that does is just create a little point here. And because of this point, there's a little bit of extra fabric. So what you want to do is start on a flat edge. Don't start where the seam is. You want to fold it over 1.5 centimeters. And we're going to do a straight stitch. So we don't need to do a zigzag stitch here because this part of the leg is not going to be stretching. So I'm used to hemming, so I do it freehand, but I probably would recommend clipping all the way along first to make it a bit neater. So I'm going to hem and then I will pause at the edges that I need to show you. So when you get to this section, you'll kind of see that there's a little bit of extra fabric, like you can't really lay it flat because it's got this extra little roll here. So we're going to utilize this seam here to sort of hide that. So what you want to do is fold this section up, fold it over. So you're sort of like tucking in this extra section on top of the seam here. Again, this is really hard with the camera in front of me. I have a lot less space to deal with. There we go. So I've tucked it under and folded it down, and now you can see this lines up and this lines up as well without any kind of extra fabric. So I will sew along here. And that is what it will look like. So you've got that little fold, and then I would just trim off the edges. And again, I would use the correct color thread as well. And then you are all done.